Yeah, I know a Doctor Who's dead, but I came across this story here where Peter Davison, the fifth Doctor, points out something that's pretty spot on as, well, really just one of the problems of recent iterations of Doctor Who. So he says, current Doctor Who has huge narrative gaps and risk prioritizing effects over story. Yes, they did. Says risks as if there's still a show to be concerned about. I don't think there is, but, we'll see. But so Peter Davison has shared his thoughts on the direction of Doctor Who, suggesting that the show's current style sacrifices storytelling for speed and spectacle. And that's been true for a while. Yeah. And even just the basic concepts. It's supposed to be this science fiction show. You got to have some sci-fi concept in it. But that is like secondary to say the least, if that, I mean, most of it is just sort of forced emotion scenes and stuff like that, and bzz, 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 and they dance around and flash the sonic screwdriver and whatnot, and then timey-wimey and it's over. And that's it. That became routine for New Who for quite a while, even before it got really bad. And it was to its detriment. Speaking in an interview on the Lewis Nichols Show, the Fifth Doctor actor expressed concern over what he sees as a shift away from narrative clarity in favor of constant action and visual effects. They seem terribly worried now about people's attention spans, he said. If something isn't happening every 2 minutes, they think people are going to turn off, but I don't believe that's true. Davison described current episodes as feeling more like trailers than fully formed stories. It's because that's pretty much the deal. It's like watching a trailer for a Doctor Who show you'd like to watch later, he added. There are huge gaps in the narrative. They're just leaping on to the next bit and hoping your brain fills in the rest. Yeah, that's not just Doctor Who. There's quite a bit of that, but it's kind of like this, fill in the blank scripts or what have you. But I never get paid for writing the story for you, It's really annoying. The former Doctor compared the current series to blockbuster superhero films, which he believes often prioritize spectacle over substance. Yeah, and that's the films, they only have 2 hours, where a series can have a lot longer. And then, of course, old Doctor Who, they had them in these different chapters and whatnot, They had a lot of time to get their story in, but that's no excuse, even if you only have 45 minutes. And a lot of space is taken up with nothing, just gobbledygook nonsense. So as the special effects got better and more expensive, there's a danger it becomes just about special effects. So, yeah, probably a lot of that where they write it around it. And here's the story we can do completely in green screen and all that sort of stuff. They're just sequences of enormously impressive effects with no real story. Yeah. Yeah. And really, they whine about they're not going to get the Disney deal renewed, so they won't have that money to afford all that stuff. But you didn't have any stories. Not really. A compelling story and the performances with actors who can pull it off can go a long way, and you can save a lot of money just on that alone. You didn't get any of that. He also questioned the assumption that modern audiences demand constant stimulation, pointing instead to the success of slower-paced crime dramas. People will become more gripped, he noted, but for some reason in science fiction they think it all has to go 100 miles an hour. Yeah, that's true. In science fiction, a lot of it, and for the longest time, has been more on adventure and that sort of thing. And a lot of them are very successful. With Star Trek being one of the few that's able to do both in it, for the most part, in the old days. Now it's just as crappy as Doctor Who, and that sort of thing. But the sci-fi concept and whatnot is what you're supposed to explore in a science fiction show or film. For the most part, a lot of them are just, it gets more akin to Star Wars, which is mistakenly called science fiction. And Star Wars has more in common with Lord of the Rings and the like than it does with Star Trek. Star Trek is more of a science fiction show, but pure science fiction, you're getting into 2001: A Space Odyssey and the like, that sort of thing. But when you combine the two, and Doctor Who would do that, sometimes in New Who, but in the old show they would. They didn't always hit it on the nose and whatnot, but for the most part, would get there and at least make the attempt. In this latest iteration, didn't even try, and then pushed it off into magic and fantasy and whatnot, because they were lazy. So Davison's being rather nice in this than I am, but he's right. They didn't really tell a story anymore. He took a lot of crap over Jodie Whittaker. He just said he didn't really agree with the idea of a female doctor, and which is his right. He doesn't have to agree with it. And people ran him off Twitter at the time. It was ridiculous. Which shows he had more to do with, identity politics than anything to do with narrative story and sci-fi possibilities and whatnot. I was open to the concept, but they didn't pursue the concept. They just threw her in there because it was for the identity politics nonsense. Same thing with Shooty. So there again, plot, character development, concept, story, all tossed aside. And you can see the result.